On. It's a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday morning at about 10, and that means that it's time for relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. And oddly enough, over the last couple of weeks, I have been doing painting. Before that, I was working on the Savoia, and I did a fair amount of unpainting, just getting rid of paint that got messed up, and I had to redo some parts completely. Clean off paint that had gone bad, fixed some major oopses, reprimed, repainted, but four streams after I had planned. On Monday, I actually did some assembly on the engine housing on the Savoia, and maybe I'll show that to you later if I remember. What you're seeing here is a paper towel, and that has stuff under it, and I should probably show that to you. The paper towel is there because I don't have a studio. I have a workbench. This is an antique workbench that my dad made ages ago, like 70 years ago or so. And I've been, every time we moved, I've taken it with me. It's screwed together, not nailed or glued. Been able to do that, and it's been, the top's been painted several times, but other than that, it's, an heirloom. But that's why I'm in the basement, because I'm working on the workbench. The workbench is in the basement, and the basement has dust because the cat trays are over there, just on the other side of the pegboard that holds up a lot of tools that are present in the work. And so this keeps the dust off, which is a good thing. And maybe I'll talk about cat litter today. Yeah, because there's a whole lot less dust with cat litter than there used to be. Another Eusta. I can talk about cat litter and Eustas. That's what I'll do in between talking about what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I am working on 4 minifigs. That was an unveiling. See that? Watch. Ta-da! There's stuff under the paper towel. These are 4 minifigs, and these are NPC characters in our Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And the way the camera is set up, you are seeing the tops of their heads. It's got all sorts of swivels on it. Let me try this. Let me see if I can do this. I can zoom in. Yeah, I can. It doesn't go down. No, look. Oh, that worked kind of. That's not bad. Yeah, my camera guy, me, is there. I hadn't done this before. This is pretty good. So these are printed on a rosin printer, which is also in another room down here in the basement, a room that can be ventilated. And Nicole very, very carefully labeled them, orc spellcaster, gnome cleric, elf archer, and this one's the best, halfling no shoes, metal armor. Because I couldn't have figured out that there are no shoes there, that there's just bare feet. They're not really bare feet, they're halfling feet. Okay. To be literal about it. But this group is the 4 divorcees. They are members of the Company of Blades, just like our D&D figures are, D&D characters. And they, when you're a divorced orc, you dress up. You're a divorced gnome. This is interesting. I don't know why the gnome had a fireball. It's a cleric, right? But there it is, holding a fireball. I think this one came out kind of cute. I think it looks okay. Some speed paint. I don't do that very often on the hair, and that turned out all right. And then I made a nonsense sigil on the back of her shield. What I'm going to be working on today is the elf archer, and just sort of in the theme of unconventional dress, the elf archer is not going to be dressed in like greens and tans and stuff. Thank you for the follow. Yay. I appreciate that. That's really nice. Thanks so much. And I'll just keep talking about this. Yeah. Apparently this is a sad elf after the divorce, unlike the other two who became a little more flamboyant. This elf is sad, and so is going to be painted in. Oh, thanks. Yeah, let me show them to you. They came out. They came out really pretty well. Yeah. I like painting the flames. It's always kind of fun. And I figured, well, if you're a divorced elf, a divorced gnome, you're going to invest in footwear, right? So she's got some shiny boots with gold highlights. Where you're going to put your money, you put it in shoes. Oh, thank you, Satanus. I appreciate it. Thanks for the follow. I'll try to be sort of entertaining today. So the orc came out okay. I like for some reason, the orc was printed with flowing hair. So if you get flowing hair, it's got to be light color, right? That's probably, I'm guessing that was a dye job. But I'm going to be painting the elf archer today. And let me zoom this back out. Yeah, so that it shows the area where I'm working. Yeah, I'm going to have to end early today, so I'm glad you started right at the beginning. I really appreciate it. It's 10 o'clock Eastern U.S. time here, and as usual, I'm going to be only semi-coherent. I'm dog watching this week. The dogs decided that at about 4:30 this morning, it would be a really fun time for them to get up and start wrestling and making noise and being really disruptive. I know they were having a really good time, but it was pretty disruptive. So the dog watching did get in the way. Well, just so you know what I know, these were very carefully labeled. It was almost like a bat cave kind of labeling. I think what's sad about this is that Nicole, when these were printed and labeled them, she wasn't being sarcastic. Oh, well, that's what happens. You get old, younger people seem to, anyway, that's what they think. So the elf archer here is going to go. I think that's it. That makes sense. It would be a 9th or 10th level gnome. Our characters, I think, are level 9 now. So the NPCs would certainly be at the same or higher level. I always liked playing a cleric. The ability to do both healing and sometimes some pretty nasty stuff, some pretty destructive stuff. I used to joke that the power to heal is also the power to destroy. Sometimes, anyway, I got in. I'm not allowed to play clerics much anymore because apparently one of my clerics was very disturbing. I was told that my cleric character was very disturbing and couldn't come back and play anymore. Well, I'm going to be painting this guy various shades of bland, various shades of bland. So I'm going to look at my color chart here and find what's bland. Buff is always bland. Okay. That dark sand, that's not too bad. That's pretty bland. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, bone white. That's a good bland color. These are almost too dark. No, that's a yellow ochre. It's not only bland, but it's yucky. Yeah, I think I'm getting some idea of what I want. There's this other one. This is one I've been using on the Savoya. It's called Deck Tan. I think that's kind of grayish, greenish, though. So that might not be the best. Yeah, Deck Tan is way too gray. It's not in the brown category. Somebody use buff. I'm searching for colors here. Looking for the colors. Medium flesh tone, that's not it. Those are metallics. This is going to take a while. I very carefully put them all away so that I could find them again. So they're away, but the being able to find them again. Cork brown is too dark. Leather brown is too dark. Flesh. Great. I'm not finding any of them. Color. I'm gonna make the elf kind of pasty looking. I'm going to use ivory for the skin. Where did those go? Where did all my tan colors go? They disappeared. There's buff. Yay. Buff with buff. Dark sand. Yeah, that was another one of them. I needed ivory and maybe yellow ochre. Oh yeah, a monk. Those I've never played an unarmed character. I've played with people who have played them, but I never have. Not myself. This is just kind of annoying not being able to find some of these colors. They're colors I haven't used much before. Okay, I should show you what I'm looking at. Let me do this. So what I'm doing is it's going to work there. Those are paint holders. Those are paint holders that are DM made. Alexis created these and printed them on our PLA 3D printer. Basically, these are PLA reels, and then she designed these inserts to hold the bottles. They're just the right size. You can see the black and white one here. They're made in halves, and then they're epoxied together. And they're tilted down just a little bit, so they're not tilted forward, but they're fairly flat like that. And then they rotate on these spindles that she also designed. And so, yeah, I'm looking through here for this one, yellow ochre. And now I just need ivory. Ivory should be obvious because it's almost white. These are metallics. Why am I looking there? There it is. Oh, yeah. So I got to show those. Now, I have to get my camera directions here. Back. So my color palette is buff. There it is. Buff, dark sand, and just to make it look kind of gross. Yellow ochre. Although bone white would be even better. I bet I can find that one. White, pink. Sorry for taking up the time to do this. I really should have done this before the stream started. Like, oh, maybe I should find the colors I want to use. That would have been the right thing to do, but I didn't. There we go. So there's the color palette. The colors are actually a little bit different once they're painted on. I'm not going to use the yellow ochre. It's just too gross color. So I'm just going to kind of pick these colors and start putting them on. I think I'm going to put some brown wash on the coat because it's quilted. It's got this really, and it's got this really nice quilted pattern. So I'm going to put a really light brown wash on that. So I think I'm going to use bone white for that. This is going to be its face and hands. And then I'll use these colors for like boots and pants. Yeah. Okay. So it's time to start. The brushes available to me are somewhat reduced. I have a nice 10-0 brush that I'm going to end up using for the most part. This one it's a Army Painter brand. It's really tiny, but it's totally worn out. There's like, I don't even know if you can see it. There's one bristle left. And so if I need to make a tiny dot, that's what it'll be. So I need to get some replacements for that. I'm going to be using my head magnifiers for most of this because I can't see close up that well. I can't see far away even worse. So I'll take my glasses off because I can't see close up with these on at all. Oh, yeah, there's some problems. Okay, I'll also need to do a little bit of fixing up. It'd be really good sometime if I did this in a way that you could actually see what was going on. But until I get a camera person who, and a director who can really, aim these things at the right place and keep me on camera. Just have to make do. What I'm doing here is looking at this because I see there are little bits of rosin that need to be cleared off. It kind of dripped down on the arrow here. See, there's like a little drip there. Those need to come off. And there's a spot here on the coat. I'm going to file those off. When I'm working on the Savoya, and other models like that, I don't usually use these files because they leave scratch marks. Especially when I'm using a metallic or a glossy paint, they'll mar the surface pretty badly. But for something like this, it's not going to show. I have to be pretty careful about this because the rosin is kind of brittle. It's hard and brittle. And I could very easily snap the arrow here, which I pretty much don't want to do. So in doing this, when I decided to, actually, our DM said that this elf is very sad. He needs to be painted bland colors. His bow, on the other hand, is his legacy bow. It's the free divorce bow. And so that might be kind of bright colors with some metallic accents, maybe. Yeah. So maybe the quiver too. So I'm looking at this. The quiver is pretty fancy. Yeah. I don't know. I'll mess around with that. What I do know is that I need to be finished with these minifigs by next week, Wednesday. That when we record the next episode of our D&D show, they're available. Got the gnome completely finished. It was really kind of shocking, but I was able to completely finish her on Monday. I don't know if I'm going to get that far along with the elf or not. It's not very complicated, but I tend to be really slow. I'm going to paint his face and hands first. I've been doing that on these other minifigs because then the rest of the colors come up to them, and I can also much more easily see where they are. My monologue today is going to be about cat litter. Why? Well, because at the very start of the stream, I had these minifigs covered with a paper towel, and I explained that was to keep the dust off, and what dust might there be in the basement, among other things, dust from cat litter, which is in the next room over. So we've had cats, a cat or sometimes more than one cat, or you probably will believe this. It's been, I think, over 50 years ago we got our first cat. So I can't speak to, really old cat litter, but I can start with the history of cat litter as we've known it since the early 1970s. We didn't have much money, and so tended to buy fairly inexpensive cat litter. But if I recall correctly, and I'm going to try to recall correctly, his head is tucked way down in here. Yep. A short aside. those who design don't always keep in mind what it's like to actually produce what they design. In this case, the design of this archer is a very realistic pose. Okay. So I have to say the design is pretty nice. And it actually printed pretty well. But it's not easy to paint because its face is hidden down here behind the arrow and the other hand. And it's very hard, at least for me, even with tiny brushes, to get the paint where it needs to go. So the design on this, makes for a great appearance. And it worked fine for the actual production of the 3D print. But it's really also a pain to paint. Getting the paint down in there without getting it all over its face. Yeah. And so if this figure wasn't painted, that would be just fine. It wouldn't be a problem. But it is being painted. And I just think that the designers should just be a little bit more thoughtful about what it is like to try to paint the figures that they've designed. Some figures, even though very nicely detailed and great in appearance, just really easy to paint because they don't have these little areas that are next to impossible to reach. I'm on camera, huh? It's every once in a while I'm going to look up to see whether what I'm doing is on camera or not, because from time to time it just isn't. Just wanders off. Another reason why. Apparently, bare shoulders. They're not really bare shoulders, they're elf shoulders. I cannot resist that. Especially bare feet. I can never, ever resist thinking about how they're not bare feet, they're people feet, or elf feet. So I did paint a bear minifigure, and it did have bare feet. So if you're going to, listen to the stream or, watch it, it's not much to watch really, other than me mostly being on camera, but not always. Give this. Tempted to give this the skin a slightly light gray wash. Like this elf head just hasn't been out in the sun for a couple months. I'm not sure. The office stayed in shape anyway, despite being sad. The arm muscles are still toned. Very stern-looking elf. Very stern face. That's if that'll focus or not. Thinking. Thinking. It may be. Yeah, I could try the paint flesh color. Of all just basic colors: red and green, blue, orange, solid bone. It's gonna look. Test it and see. I occasionally use the speed paints. I'm not very good at using them, even though they're really easy to use, right? But mainly, it's the problem is that the ones we bought, cedar skip, that might work. I'm going to test those on a little piece of paper just to see what colors they really are. Because I might redo the skin with that. The main issue with them, though, is that they dissolve the paint underneath. They don't dissolve the primer. Maybe I should say it in a different way. If I paint over them, like if I get it on a spot where I don't want it, it slops over, right? Oh, wait, is this guy's ear sticking out? No, I got him. Okay. I missed the orc ears the last time when I was painting the orc. Right, there's different kinds of speed paints, and the ones that we got just to try them. Okay, we hadn't really used them much before. If I put them on first and then they get into a place where I don't want them, which is a very likely thing, given my eye-hand coordination level, they dissolve in the overcoat, and then it just makes a mess and has to be reprimed and started over. I know that there are brands or even varieties of the same brand that don't do that, but we don't have those. I have to be just ending up cautious about how I use those speed paints. They worked well on the gnome's hair. I was able to be very careful. I'm using this bone white here. It's a pretty light color, but because of all the quilting, I'm going to put just a little bit of brown wash on it later. show off the quilting. This is the next to impossible place to reach underneath here. Under the arm. See, I can reach up under the arm this way, but then I can't see where the brush is, which kind of misses the point of being careful with the brush. I can do from this direction. Putting it on where its hair is going to end up being, but that's not painted yet, so I'll be able to fix that. Mostly this color, I said, with a little bit of wash on it to bring out the quilting. And use a different color for the belt and the button straps here. Keep those on later after this is dried. And then I'll do, after I paint those, I might end up having to do some touching up. So I'm not going to put the wash on until these straps and belts are finished. Just in case I have to come back over it. This might go pretty quickly, depending on how much I mess around with the detail, like on the quiver and the arrows. Sometimes, just painting the detail on the back of something like that can take a while. That might be a thing I could use speed paint on. I might just experiment with that a fair amount today. So this guy's, changed his wardrobe to look brown. But didn't invest in a new quiver. Needs to dry. While that's drying, I'm going to think I have some test. I don't think I have test patches of the speed paints, so I'm going to do that. Give a couple of them some tryouts here. There's a green the green color. I'm going to try that for maybe for the quiver. I'll just try those. Cat litter. So I was going to talk about cat litter. So our first cats, we got our cats in the early 70s, which now is 50 years ago. For me, who is now, that age, that's kind of a scary thing. But yeah, the cat we had, and the cat litter, if I remember the cat litter, there weren't too many different kinds of cat litters, at least not the stores that we went to. I know there was Tidy Cat. I don't know if they still make that or not, so I'm not pushing a brand. I'm just saying that was the one that I remembered. And I think that there were just like generic brands that were called cat litter or, something like that. But they were all pretty much the same thing, which was that they were granulated clay. It was just gray in little granules. And there was a lot of dust. A lot of dust involved in those cat litters then. This is called Crusader Skin, but it's really dark. That's not good for. This one is called Pallid Bone. That might be a little more pallid. If I recall correctly, too, it was highly absorptive, but at that point in the early cat litters didn't have very much of a clumping ability. Okay, I mean that was actually a big thing when the cat litter people came out with. Wow, that's brownie yellow. It's kind of ugly. Yeah, also not what I'm looking for. That might work. Well, I'll just use the wash on that. That's safer. The cat litter would come in these bags. There was like large and extra large. As I recall, you could get like 10, 25, 40-pound bags. It was pretty heavy stuff, too, in terms of weight per volume. And it was really, really dusty. It just got everywhere. And so wherever the cat tray was coated in, really just coated in this gray dust. It was just how it was. It's really bright green. That's a nice green, but I think it's too bright. It's going to be too bright for the quiver. So I'm going to use a really light green and put a gray-green wash on it to bring out the quiver. And when I say light green, I do believe literally that's what it will be because it's called light green. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to use that word. I was trying to cut back on my use of that word. But I failed, obviously. Okay, I'm going to paint the pants. Pants and the bracers now. The boots. Pants are going to be buff. So this stuff was just awful. It just got everywhere. It did absorb, and you could scoop it out, but it was mostly dust in the air, in the house, in the area where it was, and it tracked all over the place. And so, but that was pretty much what it was. There was I think probably different brands of it, but it was just all this clay. That's what cat litter was. It was also used, the same stuff was used in auto repair places because it was a very effective sopper up of oils. I think they called it high dry. And it was cheaper than cat litter because it was just used in auto repair places, and you buy it by the 50-pound or 75-pound bags. So cat litter came in like 15 or 25-pound bags because real people had to lift them and carry them home. But auto repair places, I'm looking at this, and I was wondering about the inside of the cloak, but you can see it back here. The people who worked in auto repair places were lifting stuff all the time, and so they'd get like 75-pound sacks of this stuff. And since it was pretty much the same thing as the cat litter, and if you could find it and manage the bag, it was a less expensive way of taking care of your cat and cat trays. And so I think we did that a couple of times. Yeah, so that's what cat litter was like. And then cat litter got fancy. There were two breakthroughs in cat litterness that I remember. What was I going to be doing? I was using Buff, right? One was they came out with scented cat litter. That was, it's supposed to be a pleasant scent to not smell like cat poop. And not smelling like cat poop or cat pee, was a pretty good thing. And so scented cat litter was one breakthrough in the world of cat litters. And that was nice, but the more important one was clumping. And you don't think, well, clumping, that doesn't sound like fun. Scented, it just makes it more pleasant and all of that. Okay, but clumping was actually more important in the practical sense, because the sense, it was just, it wasn't that it canceled the odors or anything. It's just that it masked them with this kind of perfumey smell. And if you didn't particularly like the perfumey smell, well, it's what you got. But clumping made cleaning the cat box a whole lot easier, because the cat pee, instead of just making little bits of wet clay granules all over the litter box, that you had to kind of sieve out. You could use a different kind of cat scoop, and it'd be this hard ball, this hard lump of clay. But we started to pay extra, not so much for the scented stuff, but for the clumping stuff. But I still, and again, it might just be the budget that we were working with or the stores we went to. I don't recall a whole lot of different options. Some other cat litter breakthroughs. As more brands came out, clumping is clumping. You couldn't distinguish your brand very much that way. So in order to distinguish your brand of cat litter, mainly it had to do with the scent. Where at one point it became the convenience of the packaging. So instead of coming in these kind of like big paper bags, some of them started to come out with buckets, especially, when everything became plastic. So these plastic buckets instead of the bags, and those were handy. They didn't rip. If you didn't use it all, it had a lid on it. You didn't have to worry about it spilling. It was more expensive because you had to pay for the plastic bucket. But there was a fair amount of convenience associated with that. Still, nobody was really able to do much about the dust, though. I think some brands tried to promote themselves as being like low dust. Nothing. No one could pretend that they were dust free. It didn't even try doing that. Because that wasn't a thing that could be done. Dust continued to be. I managed to get it on the coat. Yeah, so I've got some flesh touch up on the hand up here. Touch up the buff on the coat where I got it on there. Trying to get it in under the leg here, and it was not successful. Got a spot there. Well, this yellowish color, it's kind of an unpleasant yellowish color, it looks like. I think that makes, it works with the theme I'm trying to do here with this elf. Then there just seemed to be this explosion of cat litter technology. Just different things. Some of it was just packaging, different colors. But the biggest breakthroughs were on the same two themes as the first two, which was odor and dust. Okay. When we're dealing with cat litter, those are the two factors in my cat litter experience and opinion. Those are the two things that make a difference. Okay. Does it help reduce the odor? And is there a lot of dust involved? And in my opinion, this is just from my experience, and other people might disagree. I don't want to get into a cat litter controversy here. I want to talk about my experience with cat litter. So my experience with cat litter is that the dust is more important than odor. So not having cat litter dust, in my experience, in my opinion, is more important to me than odor control, especially since we tend to put the cat tray. The other thing, and this is related to dust, so I'll add a third factor, is tracking. The cats don't leave the litter in the box. They sometimes just brush it out of the box. Okay. Sometimes, a lot of times, it just sticks to their feet and then it tracks, and so it gets everywhere. So it's not just the dust; it's the litter itself. So I'd say, dust control is, in my experience, has been really important. Tracking control has been pretty important, and odor control, it's good to have odor control. You don't really need to have stinky cat litter all over the place. There was a time, I remember, fads change. Everything had to be perfumed, and then nothing could be perfumed. So, laundry detergent had scents in it. And then that fell out of favor. And then the big deal was to be unscented. Same thing happened at the same time with cat litter. Pleasant scent gave way to the scent-free. That seemed to was totally independent of the dust control, though. Just, if you didn't want dust, you tried to get the stuff that didn't have dust and didn't worry too much about the scent. Like cat litter making has now become like a science. In the 70s, like I said, there was Tidy Cat. It was a cat litter brand. And I don't remember if there were others or not, honestly. I think there were store brands. You could get different kinds of cat litter. But now there's like dozens and dozens of brands of cat litter. So in our quest to reduce dust and tracking, to keep the cat litter in the litter box and not very far around it, we found that cat litters are now made out of all sorts of other stuff. It's not just clay anymore. There was one we tried that was made out of walnut shells. That was actually pretty good. It was a really dark brown color, and it didn't track very much, but there was still a fair amount of dust in it. one we're using now, if I'm not mistaken, is made out of corn cobs. So that what's interesting is manufacturers of cat products using waste products of other things, like nutshells and corn cobs and stuff. This one has practically no dust, I have to say. It's working really, really well. It clumps nicely. Everything still clumps. If it doesn't clump, you can't sell it anymore. You know, once clumping became a thing, clumping litter became a thing. You couldn't sell you could only sell like generic, least expensive cat litter. You couldn't even, try to sell it if it didn't clump, pretty much. I'm not liking this. The buff, I guess it's okay as pants. Okay. The buff is okay as pants. It's kind of yellowish. But I'm not liking it on the bracers. No, not really liking that much at all. You might paint that over with something else. Maybe, desert sand or something. See the difference there on that little piece of thing I did here? Hi, thanks for joining in. I appreciate you coming back. No, I really like the way I can't even remember what I've used anymore. I like the way the dark sand turned out here on that. I don't like the yellow, the buff. This isn't giving enough contrast. I'm expressing dissatisfaction with my choice of bland colors here. I need to wait for some paint to dry before I can pick other colors out. These two are pretty good, but I think this needs to be the pants and the bracers. And I have to not do this buff. It's just not good. The bone white and the dark sand are working together. But the bone white, which is actually darker than the dark sand, I'm going to go back to color charting here. I thought the buff would be okay, but it's really yellow compared to the others. Doesn't make sense. That's not. Am I getting my colors confused? That buff should be like the dark sand is the yellower color. Well, okay. I managed to just like really become confused about these colors here. Sorry, I really am. I don't know what's going on here. I used bone white. I confused myself. I'm being reduced to muttering. Okay, that buff is not. That's not what I want. The dark sand goes pretty well with the bone white. I have another brand of paint. This buff might be better buff. Oh no. You went too fast. So was everybody okay with that? Was everybody okay with going back and starting over? I hope so. Okay, this buff is better. I'm going to use this buff belts in the boots. I'm going to use the dark sand on the pants. I hope your players were understanding in terms of, what happened. But sometimes that can happen. It's just things move along way more quickly than you anticipated. Of course, the opposite can happen too. our D&D group on our D&D show, with some frequency, gets distracted by stuff. And our DM complains that I had these things all planned for the next 3 sessions. And it's now going to take the next 6 sessions. Because you went chasing off after something that wasn't even relevant. But as long as your players are understanding something like that, everybody learns together. That's not bad. It's not a bad thing. So I hope you're not frustrated by that. I'm just going to go ahead and paint the boots. The other buff color I used, that's very yellow. I'm going to be painting over that. This yellowish stuff is going to disappear. This particular elf is one of the 4 divorcees. And whereas the orc spellcaster and the gnome cleric decided to deal with their situation by becoming somewhat flamboyant, the elf archer is just brown. His life became beige. It's sort of beiged out here. He's very dull right now. I am going to be putting a light brown wash on his quilted armor, just so it looks a little bit less bland, lifeless. I mean, he wants to look lifeless, but not that lifeless, not flat, just flat, dull, sad, lifeless, just listless, lifeless. Yeah, that yellow it just doesn't work. I'll be painting over that. I hope it dries soon so I can get on with it. Well, I'm waiting for that unfortunate yellow color to dry so I can repaint it a slightly beigeier color. And in the interim, while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to paint the quiver. The quiver is still going to be green because although this elf invested in brown clothes to look beigey, didn't get a new quiver. So the quiver is going to be light green with a green wash. I've used this a lot. The inside of the submarine, there's a lot of light green on the inside of the submarine. And it takes the gray-green wash pretty well. And that's what I want to, show the quilting pattern, the pattern on the quiver. I'm going to be finishing early today. I'm not going to go all the way till 1. I'm just going to go until 12:30. I have an appointment. It's a 1:45 appointment, right? But like all appointments nowadays, it's like, oh, your appointment's at 1:45. Show up at least 15 minutes early. So why don't they just say, show up, your appointment's at 1:25? Why not just say that? And then you'd show up right on time. But no, it's your appointment's at 1:45, but show up at least 15 minutes early. And if you weren't paying attention to the the additional stuff that they send you, you'd say, well, my appointment's at 1:45, right? And then you'd show up at 1:45. And they'd say, no, you were supposed to be here no later than 1:30. But the appointment's at 1:40. When they make the appointment, it's not like the appointment is at 1:30. No, the appointment's at Port Brush. Bristles got bent. Yeah, okay, I think I got it back. I need to buy new brushes sooner than later. Cat hair. So I need to wrap up here about 12:30 so I can drive the more than half hour to get to my appointment at least 15 minutes early. Hopefully I'll get, if the that yellowish paint, which has a gloss to it too, that yellowish paint is not what I was expecting it to be. It was actually supposed to be the same color as the boots. Obviously isn't. They both are buff, different manufacturers, so when you're buying paint, pay attention to that. That one manufacturer's light green isn't going to be at all like the other manufacturer's light green necessarily. And in this case, it's pretty clear that one buff is not the same as the other buff. Pretty dramatic difference. The other thing we discovered is that the paint in the bottle and the paint on the bottle cap, the wet paint or the paint on the color of the cap sometimes has absolutely nothing to do other than that, if it's blue, it's likely to stay sort of blue. But in terms of specific shade, practically nothing at all to do with the color that you actually get. So that's what I was showing you before, is these sheets of paper that I have to do a touch up on the boot here. Spots that didn't cover. That's not the same color. Good grief. What am I thinking? That off. This, what's happened with this is this paint is a little more viscous than the other. And when it dries, it shrinks. And when it shrinks, sometimes it pulls away from itself and it leaves spots that are not painted. Yeah. I need to now use this color, and I'm going to repaint the pants. This color is in tone between the boots and the coat. It's going to be almost indistinguishable. So why bother? I don't know. I'm just bothering because that yellowish color just didn't work. So going back to cat litter, I was talking about cat litter. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about cat litter. So cat litter used to just be dried clay particles. That's all it was. And it was cheap and it was dusty and it got everywhere and it did the job. And it was also useful as an absorbent for mopping up oil spills and things like that. It wasn't one thing you couldn't do with it. People thought they could. It's like when you're driving in the winter, this was some advice that was given, is keep a bag of cat litter. Why? So that if you got stuck, you would throw the cat litter. You would use it like sand, okay? But it didn't work that way. And it was really absorptive. So if you had an oil spill, cat litter, the old-fashioned kind, the kind you used to get, right? When it was just clay particles, that was really good at absorbing oils and liquids. It would make sense. That's what it was designed to do, is absorb cat pee, right? It was also good at oils too. But there used to be this thing about keeping a bag of cat litter in your car, so if you got stuck, you could use it to improve your traction. That did not work because it's clay. And what happens to clay when it gets wet? It just turns into like a slurry. And so if you put it under the wheels of your car, the tires, put it under the tires of your car, all it would do was turn into slime that was actually pretty slippery. Nobody talks about that anymore with all the new cat litters. It's just not a thing people talked about, but that was a thing that people talked about. And it wasn't a good idea. Yeah, this is better. I mean, it doesn't have that yellowish tone to it that the other color did. Use a bigger brush for the pants. What to do about the hair? I think maybe I'll just paint the hair kind of a brown color. There have been improvements. There's definitely been improvements in cat litter. I mean, real improvements, not just marketing plays. It's possible to pay huge amounts of money for like designer cat litter or whatever. Cat litter sponsored by your favorite influencer. I just speak a little contemptuously about that. Or you can just get cat litter that isn't scented but suppresses odor, because they have really good deodorizers now that are pretty safe. Or you can just clean your cat box at least once a day. That has the same effect on minimizing odors. But they've really made improvements in terms of dust and tracking. Every time we've tried something new, it was better than what was there before in terms of how much dust there was. The one we have now there's practically no dust at all. Just no dust. It still tracks, gets in the cat's paws and the cat tracks it around. We found some really good mats, though. They've also had improvements in cat litter tracking mats that catches the litter in the cat's paws and traps it so it doesn't go all over the place. It does go a distance, though. I mean, it's not like there isn't any cat litter to be vacuumed up periodically, but it's not like the old clay stuff. We would, you couldn't even, the room where the cat tray was, sometimes it didn't keep up with it. It wasn't just even a matter of dusting. There was like a 16th of an inch layer of clay dust. And the thing is, you couldn't use a wet cloth on it. Oh, that was another thing with the clay litter is when it got dusty everywhere, and it did, you needed to sweep it up or vacuum it. And if you used a damp cloth, then you would end up with the situation I was talking about earlier, which is that you would just end up with slurry. And we'd done that. It's like, oh, well, just wash it down. And no, you can't wash clay litter dust, especially if it's dusty. I mean, if it's lumpy, that's one thing. But if it's just the dust, you immediately end up with a slurry. And it's pretty bad. It took a lot of washing to clean that up. Okay. Well, this now is pretty bland. I've achieved the blandness I was aiming for. Need to do something with the hair. I think this is this neutral brown. Maybe was the speed paint any good? Is there a brown speed paint? Red, orange, yellow, hardened leather. Oh, I tested these before. Where did I put that? That one's not too bad. Bone. Whoa, that's a mess. It's pretty dark. Yeah, I'm gonna try this. The downside of this is I might just have to use the darker speed paint. Once I put this on, it has to stay speed painted. Pallid bone. Yeah. This color, kind of this yellowish brownish color. Just try to, stay in keep it consistent here. Only 11:30. I'm getting a lot done. I'm getting a lot done on this model really quickly, and running out of things to say about cat litter. Wow, I don't know what's going to happen now with the rest of the session. I could talk a little bit more about cleaning up cat litter. Especially the sorry, I need to pay attention to what I'm doing here. So I'm going to stop talking about cat litter and just paint this guy's spiky hair. Get the speed paint effect. The speed paint effect is that it has a darker pigment in a pigmented, the solvent is pigmented, and then there's a darker pigment suspended in it, and the darker stuff is supposed to flow into the hollows so that the hollows are darker and the tops are lighter. So it gives the same effect as using a wash and a highlight, but with just one application, which is why it's called speed paint, because it's speedier than not speed paint. Yeah, and it's kind of working like it should. I just have to be careful with it because I can't touch up over it. Putting it dissolves. If I try to put a paint over it, it dissolves into that paint and it just makes a mess. I might use this on the arrows, on the feathers on the arrows. Not this color, but maybe like the darker one or something. I think there was one that was kind of reddish. I keep losing the thing I was using. Huh. Um, yeah, I don't know. This is sad. I've only been an hour and a half into this. I was going to talk about cat litter for almost 3 hours, and it's only filling half the time. Well, I can talk about different size packages, pails versus bags. Um, one thing for sure is cat litter has a hugely long shelf life. So when we buy it, we buy big bags of it because, it's cheaper by volume than I'm looking for the thing. Why am I not finding this thing that I tested it on? It's like the second time I mislaid this little piece of paper in which I brushed this stuff. There isn't any place for it to go. There is like 4 square feet of space here. And I didn't drop it on the floor. I didn't put it over there. I just used it just recently to test this other color. That's really weird. I can't explain it. It is inexplicable. Very weird. Didn't put it there. I put it, it's somehow getting inside of this. No. Wow. Weird, 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 weird. I think this color will work. I need to test it again. Yeah, this is sort of a reddish brown. I'm using this since I'm having some success with these speed paints right now. I'm going to be using this on the feathers of the arrows. Wow, that's working. It's more transparent than I expected it to be. The speed paints are designed to be used. You have to have a light primer underneath, and they really are like, oh, okay. What happened there is I was bringing the brush up to the work. I smashed it into the guy's elbow. When I have to try to fix that. Just live with it. Right there, you can see it. And this stuff dissolves. That's the thing that I was saying I didn't want to have happen, which was get this on something and then have to try to paint over it. And that happened on the guy's elbow there because I was not careful as I brought my brush up to the work surface. That is the most frequent source of oopses. Stream is the brush going to and from the work surface. I can't get there from here, so I'm not going to try. Okay, that worked pretty well on the arrows there, on the feathers of the arrows. Oops. Is whatever color that was, the dark sand. All right, this is actually coming along pretty well. Need to clean this brush. I'm going to make an effort to wash that speed paint off of the elbow as much as I can, because otherwise it's going to dissolve into the paint that I'm going to use to touch it up. That was an unnecessary distraction from the discussion of cat litter packaging. Okay, this is kind of working okay. I got that off. I just need to touch it with the appropriate color. I think this is it. No, it's off. It's from the jar. I've made this mistake 3 times now of not having the right color. It's this color. This is coming along pretty well. Need to paint the arrow shaft and the bow. This is all bindings on here. Just leather brown with a wash, with an umber wash. The bow, the tips of the bow, I think I'm going to do those the same green as the quiver. Just, use leather brown with an umber wash and it looks like leather. Done that over and over and over again with a fair amount of success. And I use it frequently enough that I should be able, in fact, I had it out earlier and put it away. There it is. Considering how colorless this elf is, I've gone through a lot of colors, and only a couple of them were ones I didn't want to use. There's most of this bow here is just like leather bindings, kind of weird that way. But, its bow is its bow. Even though this elf got sad and turned beige. Okay. Kept his quiver and his bow pretty much as they were. And this leather brown doesn't look at all like leather until it has an umber wash put on it. And then it looks just like leather, which is interesting. We discovered that when we were saying, we were playing with colors, and it says, that's supposed to be looking like leather, and it doesn't. We said, well, we're going to put a wash on it anyway to show the texture of the bindings, and then it was, it looks like leather. That's a happy thing. Arrowhead. I'm looking at this. The arrowhead is bound down with leather. I think it's supposed to be stone and not metal, which is kind of weird. It's a really low-tech kind of thing. But then it looks like it's metal. I'm going to I think I'll paint it just going to paint it dark gray. It's taking as much time to do this as almost the rest of it, just because of the colors involved. So cat litter, we used to just get the clay cat litter was really pretty heavy by volume. Some of the stuff now practically weightless. It's just really weird that it even works. But it's made out of these like airy, almost like pumice in terms of its weight to volume kind of thing. The one we use is moderately heavy. It's not the lightest. Not the lightest cat litter, but it doesn't leave dust. But there are some, you can get this bucket. Usually they'll come in buckets, not bags, because they're friable. I think they're light because they will crush, and instead of like granules, it'll get dusty. So it comes in buckets, but you get this like big bucket that would ordinarily weigh maybe 20 pounds, and it'll weigh 5. And I can see, how for some people that would be really critical. Despite the stir thing there's nothing that can substitute for just shaking it up by hand, right? I'm using this to paint the arrow shaft. It's just a dark brown color. I don't want to mess. It's hard to paint it. Around the hand and things. So I don't want to mess with a wash on it. I was thinking of painting it. I'm putting the smoky ink wash on it because that makes it look really pretty wood. But that's just not going to happen. Just getting painted dark brown. Hopefully. Yeah, there's enough contrast with the leather brown to not be to make it invisible. It's an okay color, and it's dark enough so that the arrow shaft will be visible on the screen. Could have painted it black. That would have been okay too. This is more in keeping with an elf that would use, just the maybe wood with a shellac on it or something. When you look at cat litter technology, clumpiness was just really an important thing. That just made, it really did make a big difference in terms of cat box cleanup. Is when it would clump and form these nice hard balls that didn't fall apart. Could just scoop them right up and get rid of them. So I have to say that, as far as cat litter technology goes, in my opinion, based upon my use of cat litter, that really was the biggest thing. And I needed to paint I missed it. As I'm turning it over here, the arrow feathers under here needed to be painted that speed paint color. I got the outside of it, but you can see there from this angle how important it is, and it wasn't in the angle I was painting at. It wasn't obvious. I need to fix that. while I'm still thinking about it. So clumpiness was really the biggest thing, and that was actually one of the first first big real breakthroughs in cat litter technology, I think. I know for some people, they would say odor control would be right up there with clumpiness. I didn't find that to necessarily. Sorry, I need to fix this now. As I was moving the brush out of the way, I got the speed paint on the inside of the arm, and I'm going to do my best to wipe that off because washing it off will work. Painting over it won't. Okay. Put the umber wash on the leather now. Get that done. Umber works better than brown on the leather. There's not, you would think, well, what's the difference between umber and brown? And there really isn't that much, but it's noticeable on the leather binding. I'm going to be using a very light brown wash on the rest of this guy. Very light, right? Hardly any. But this when it works, makes that kind of orangey looking stuff look like leather. It's kind of subtle, but effective. Brings out just like the speed paint did. It sinks and into the crevices, and they get darker than the higher points. So it not only makes it look more like leather, but it also brings out the texture of the print. In this case, the wrappings. And then I'm going to paint the ends of these the same green as the quiver, and the very points I'm going to paint the same color as the arrowhead. Just trying to avoid using too many colors. So yeah, clumping litter, that was a good thing. Odor control for some people, really important. Dust control, that came later, and there's lots and lots of different variations of composition of the litter, and some are really good at dust control and others are mediocre at dust control. But for us, right after clumping, dust control was the next most important, and so we've settled on a brand that it isn't scented, it's unscented, but it keeps the dust down really well. Go back to this light green. I want this to dry so I can get the green wash on the quiver and the arrow and the bow. And then I can be done with that. I'm going to use a metallic color on the arrowhead and the tips of the bow. Use steel, which is a very dark tinted metallic. You could tell that it's metallic, but it's not real glistening. It's not real shiny. I think that will work on bits. So I don't want it to look out like ostentatious. I just want it to look kind of functional. The last couple of litters that we've tried, just saying they're making them out of waste products now. So the one before this was made out of walnut shells. That worked really pretty well. It clumped. Okay, I was kind of surprised. I didn't think it would, but it clumped pretty well. And there wasn't very much dust in it. Not compared to the clay products anyway. Compared to those, it was pretty dust controlled. I guess I'll say it wasn't dust free, but it was, it controlled it pretty well. I think I need to put the brown wash on this guy. I'm going to use the brown, not the umber, the brown, and I'm going to be trying to get very, very little of it on the model. This is the green I'm going to use on the quiver and the bow. Oh, and I need steel. Here's the steel. Can't I find brown? Brown. Here. I started this stream with a clean workbench, and now I've got paints all over the place as I kept pulling them out and trying them. Okay. I'm a little bit reluctant to do this, but it really has to be done, or else you can't see the quilting. So I'm going to do my best to just hardly put any on. Just really, really light coat. And I hope this brush, there might be another brush that's better for this. This one should be, but it's a question of whether I can keep it from. I'm going to try this. It's a little stiffer, and I think it will control the wash better. I just need to be really careful around the arms, so I'm not slopping. It's a really broad-tipped brush, so I just need to be careful that I don't end up getting it all over everything. I managed to look at that. I managed to fill the palette with all these weird little bits of paint and stuff I've been using on what was supposed to be essentially a monochrome elf. need to dry brush this. This will suck up a lot of this. Okay, and I don't want that much on the brush. Okay, well, it's doing what it's supposed to do. We don't want it to look dirty. Sometimes with the wash, that can be the effect that you get. It just looks like dirty streakiness. Just wanted to put some emphasis on the quilt pattern. So, I am spending as much time taking the wash off here as I am putting it on. It does make it look better, though. It doesn't brighten it up. I mean, we're staying with the theme of I think it's looking okay. I'm going to do this down here also. Just little bits. Yeah, that's good. Just little bits on the pants and the boots. Just hardly any of them. It just brings out the texture a little bit. Adds a little bit of color. I'm trying to make it look like it's not just gotten dirty. I don't want him to look like he just got dirty. And a little bit on these guys up here to try to catch the detail that was put on there. Highlights. Little bits of highlighting on the face and the hands. I think that's okay. This came out okay. He's pretty beige, quite beige. The wash didn't darken it too much. It's a little more than I like. I might just try to get some of that, the dark spots, where it looks more like dirt than anything else. Bit, tiny little bit more on the belt. Okay, I can live with how this turned out. How's the time doing? Oh my, that last hour went fast. I'm going to put the green wash on the green bits, and then maybe try to paint the steel. And then I'm going to have to get going. Looks like I've got an alarm set, so I won't miss my appointment. But I just want to remind everybody I have to finish at 12:30 today, because I have an appointment that I need to get to at least 15 minutes early. Right? So I can't get there at the appointed time. I have to get there 15 minutes before the appointed time. Yeah, the last time I looked up at the clock, it was like 11:30. I said, I've got a whole hour to get this done. Now I've got it just like 10 minutes to finish up here. I'm not going to get this completely done today. What I'm not going to be getting done is the base. So I'll finish that when I come back on Friday. The base is really simple. It's just gray with a dark gray wash. Really fast. And I might even wait. I might just do so this wash here is there's embellishments on the quiver here. And what this is doing is it's making it look less lime green, a little more woodsy green. Also, highlighting the texturing of the quiver. I looked at the speed paint that I had available, and It was just way too bright. So this is working. This is doing what it needs to do. The same thing here is just changing the color just a little bit so it looks velvety. I guess, talking about cat litter, it was just so fascinating that the time went by so quickly. I don't know what I'll do on Friday. About something else that is of no consequence. Okay. Yeah, this whole thing is coming out not too bad. Not too bad. Tiny touches of metallic on the ends of the bow and the arrowhead. And I'm going to call it a wrap. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to talk about Dice and Dungeons, which is a group of family and friends that puts on an amazing Dungeons and Dragons show that streams most Sundays at 2 on Twitch with a live chat. And all of the previous episodes, and there's way over 100 of them, appear on YouTube, and you can listen to them as a podcast as well. And I want everybody to check it out because it is really cool. I mean, I'm not just saying that. I am saying that because I'm in it. And I'm part of the production, but it's just a really good D&D show. Our dungeon mistress, Alexis, has created an amazing and engaging world in which we play. We as characters, we are in character a lot. Okay? And so you get to know us as our characters, which is, I think, a lot of fun. We get sidetracked into all sorts of amusing sorts of digressions. Did I just spatter paint all over me? Probably. We sometimes get into battles, death-defying battles. In my particular case, mostly dead a couple of times already in those battles. So they are pretty serious. They can get pretty serious pretty fast. We can get pretty silly pretty fast. Sometimes that's how we deal with impending doom. Approach it with humor. The Changeling Druid is gradually succumbing to the Fey influences that she's had in her life. A Tabaxi Bard, who has been turned into a badger because of a curse, as a mortal enemy. Backstory. But yeah, I just want to put a plug in for our show because these things that I'm painting now, these minifigs, are actually going to show up in our show as hopefully helpful NPCs. They are part of the Company of Blades, which is the mercenary group into which we were recruited early on. It gives us the context for several of our adventures. And also pays our bills in game. I mean, really. You can help pay our bills by becoming a follower. Thank you for those who became followers today. And you can even go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons. It's patreon.com/diceanddungeons and become a patron. And you'll get access to our DM's notes on session notes, and also our improv warm-ups that we do before we record each session, and those tend to be pretty sillily hilarious on purpose. And lately we've been doing hot takes from cold reads, where we ask artificial intelligence to create something for us, and we read it. It's a cold read. Okay, we just read it right off the screen as it appears and comment on it, and we're not impressed by AI. But I think you'd find them kind of fascinating as well, to see what it comes up with or fails to come up with in response to our prompts. I'm going to need to wrap up now because my alarm is going to ring at any moment. You probably won't hear it because this microphone filters out all sorts of sounds, like the humidifier pump and the furnace and the goings on upstairs and everything else. But here is our sad elf. And the sad elf is done, except for the base, which will be painted this dark gray color like the other two. So these are the divorcees. And unlike these two that have dealt with their, well, you can see how they managed to deal with their divorce. They dealt with it boldly, okay? Whereas the elf has become beige. Like that. The elf has beiged out in response, whereas the orc and the gnome have embraced their new status in a slightly different way. So the fourth one, which I'll be starting on Friday, is a halfling warrior, and she's just going to, have metal armor and a giant sword with runes, and she's going to be dealing with her situation by just like whatever, not changing at all. And so this one's going to just be painted pretty traditional warrior metallic scale armor, not quite reacting the same way as these guys. I'm going to leave this on the stand because I need to paint the base. I've got another one of these holders that I will use for the halfling. Thanks, everybody. Sorry I need to leave early today because I need to be at least 15 minutes early for my appointment. So I'll need to be going soon. So I need to wrap up here, clean up, and hit the road. Also take the dogs out. Can't forget about my dog sitting this week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the follows. Thanks for joining in and chat. And I hope everybody and everybody comes back on Friday for more relaxing painting with Dice and Dungeons. Bye.